still get confused. So says
Where you're doing great.
Thank you. It says that we're live, but I have 0 viewers, so I have to wait just a little bit to make sure.
Sure.
And see if people come in. And I might be live, I might not. Maybe Lackluster will let me know.
Yeah, it's not coming up on my YouTube yet that you're live. So.
Oh, really?
I'm sitting there clicking the notifications button over and over. Figure I'll help you out that way if I can.
Okay. Here we go. Lackluster says you're on. And it still says 0 viewers. Oh, and there's a woman named Cheyenne. Hello. And Game Lover 2222. I'm alive. DSW FTW. Exclamation point. Exclamation point. Exclamation point. Ooh. So, hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Liskey. This is my YouTube channel. So I said about a month ago that I was going to be going live every Friday. And it was originally going to be to talk about the comments from my Tuesday video. But it turned out that I'm not very good at doing that. So I typically just come on Friday nights to shoot the shit with you fine folks. But last week in my stream, there was 2 people on opposing sides of the viewpoint about free speech and what that is, and if it's good and if it's not. And we've all seen comment sections and how they can get kind of, there's nothing really good about a comment section when trying to convince people or explain a point. So I invited a man named Art and a man named Paul. I keep wanting to do Noah because Noah's Ark and then Art and then but that's what my mind has been doing lately. So we don't have Noah. We have Paul. Hello, Paul. How are you?
Doing pretty well. Hoping we can begin as soon as possible. Or, well, we already started, actually. So, hi, Internet.
Paul's been chomping at the bit. And Art, how are you this evening?
Fantastic, but getting better.
Okay, perfect. Wonderful. And Paul, where do you live right now?
In the Dominican Republic, the capital, actually, Santo Domingo.
Okay, got it. And Art, what about you?
I am in Crystal Beach, Florida.
Okay.
Which is the Sun Coast by Clearwater Beach, I guess is the closest.
Okay. I don't know much about Florida, but just so our viewers can
West Coast in the middle.
Okay. Got it. Okay, well, welcome both of you. So last week I asked everyone, and I'll ask the viewers a couple times as we get going, where they sit on the free speech fence. I asked the audience last week, if you're a free speech absolutist, to put a 1, and if you're not a free speech absolutist, or you think that free speech should not be free, I guess, to put a 2. And there was mostly 1s and a couple 2s. Paul, you said you were a 2 guy. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to make any clarifying points before we get going, and then I'll let Art, and then we can have a conversation?
Well, I suppose that I was maybe thinking too much about what you were trying to say when you said absolute. In my opinion, when we talk of free speech, we need to consider multiple other details. So I can't simply consider it to be absolute. For that reason, I was saying, like, if we were to include like bullying and hate speech, I cannot consider that a good thing. So for that reason, I was opposing the idea of including those 2 apps to free speech.
You said hate speech, and what was the other one?
Bullying.
I'm sorry?
Bullying.
Bullying. Okay. Okay, so you believe that hate speech and bullying speech is outside of or should be outside of the protected free speech. Is that your position?
Yes.
Okay. Art, how about you shore up your view on free speech, if you don't mind, for these listeners?
Sure. Let's start by saying that I believe in the United States concept of free speech, which means it is not completely absolute. You do not have the right to incite violence. I believe the words of Oliver Wendell Holmes was calling it fighting words. And of course, we have the old Western saying of them's fighting words. That is not protected speech. Plagiarism is not protected speech. Slander and libel are not protected speech. Outside of those items, however, I believe that all speech must be protected.
Okay, well, why? Okay, all right. So Paul, you said hate speech and bullying speech. Maybe we can start. Maybe we can start debating that. You two can go back and forth, and if you need me, I'll be here. But
Sure.
so for me, and I'll stay out of it. But I guess I would ask Paul, what would you classify as hate speech or bullying speech? And then Art, you can just jump in, and then you guys can have fun.
Roger.
Well, I basically had to investigate that to have a more informed opinion of it. Hate speech would be basically any type of comment that would be used in order to, let's say, exclude other people, races, or religion. Anything that you use in order to separate society. And in my opinion, at least something that I had to investigate in here, I consider that free speech is whatever we're allowed to use in order to improve society. If you want to use hate speech or bullying in this case, I do not consider that you're helping society. You're only separating us, and that is not something that I consider we should approve of.
Okay, well, so from that, the question comes, is that who gets to decide what is advancing society? Who gets to decide what's a good idea and what's a bad idea?
I was wondering that for a while, and I mean, based on my limited knowledge, I would say that I would trust some politicians, historians, people that know what has happened in the past and what could happen in the future to avoid us from making the mistake again. But then again, I am only a 30 years old guy, so I can't say that I have the right answers.
Okay, well, so here are some exceptions from around the world where speech is not free. Okay, in Sweden, they prosecuted a 70-year-old woman for reporting to the police when migrants were found defecating in the streets and burning cars. It was called hate speech. Simply the act of her calling the police to report the immigrants defecating and burning cars was called hate speech.
Would say that she did the right thing because she's basically reporting the destruction of propriety, and I would consider that that's correct. That's the right thing.
And yet, the politicians said that that's hate speech and had her arrested and prosecuted.
Or I suppose that part of the problem there is that our new generation is a little too sensible to some things, and maybe they are really touchy when it comes to some things being done in the old way. I can't exactly identify what's the problem, but I have to say that lately people are being more sensible than they have to.
More sensitive, yeah, more sensitive than they should be. Certainly, I agree. I think a thick skin is important. Also in Sweden, a 71-year-old man was prosecuted simply for sharing his perspective on the Quran. A man named Denny Abramson. He said, "A few years ago, I thought of Islam as any other ordinary religion out there. But ever since I read the Quran, I was shocked by the hatred that exists within it, the misogyny, the hatred towards the infidels. The more Islam takes over, the more we compromise. Islam is totalitarian ideology, and with it comes dictatorship. So what I'm trying to say is our democratic system is in danger." He said that and was arrested for it. How about that?
In my opinion, we have a huge conflict there because you do have to defend the right of people to express their opinion of their own religion. And there is the conflict that you should not express yourself too openly when you have let's say, opinions about misogyny and, let's say, hate of other people or a gender or another religion. So it's a little difficult for me to give my opinion on that area. I want to say.
Right, and that's where the problem comes in, right? That we don't have you can't suppress what some people call hate speech because sometimes a good idea by one person is thought of as hate speech by another.
Yes, I can see.
Yeah, would you agree with that? I mean, who would be? You had mentioned politicians before that they kind of knew the history, so they could set us up for a future that was a little bit cleaner. And
That's the thing. I was thinking, like, what particular group of people would be able to do that? And I was thinking, well, in history, we learn what happened in the past so as not to repeat it in the future. So I guess that historians would be one group that could help us there. Politicians already have the knowledge and the tool and the predisposition to represent people and help them with that. But then we will need to consider multiple groups to work in that, and through the years, modify these sporadically or constantly based on the changes on society. Because
wait, modify what?
Modify the rights related to freedom of speech.
To help ensure people don't get offended, or what would be the purpose of modifying the codes of speech?
Regulate what people can say, because the laws regarding to similar to freedom of speech, they were created, if I'm not mistaken, I believe about 200 years ago. Can you help me with that area, Art, please?
Regarding what exactly?
What was the freedom of speech created?
It was established in the bill. Actually, well, if you want to go back to the original conception, we're going back to Athens, Greece. So we're talking 2,500 years ago in Athens, Greece. That's where the original freedom of speech started. It's considered the foundation of any true democracy. So it goes way back. In the United States, it's only the Bill of Rights. It's established in the Bill of Rights.
One thing that I ended up thinking is that since this was created so many years ago, there has to be someone, or at least not someone, a group of people that is in charge of regulating or of thinking, of conceiving at what point we have to advance and create more specific areas so that we can provide people what they need, the right to express themselves without destroying society.
Yes, but again, we get down to the question of who gets to make that decision. Who gets to decide what's a good idea and a bad idea? I've already given you a few examples of where government was given that right to decide, and they came up with absolutely terrible, terrible decisions. I'll give you another one. In 2012, a guy named Gregory Elliott in Canada was fired from his job and then prosecuted for a tweet in which he dared to question feminist theory. He didn't threaten anybody, but he did end up being arrested and lost his job simply for saying, basically, I don't believe this is wrong I think feminism is wrong here. So that's what the government ends up doing when we give them that responsibility. You don't see that as a problem?
I do see the problem there. The problem is another problem, or at least my concern is that if we were to say that, okay, since no one can regulate this, we just allow every person to express themselves openly. The problem that I see if we were to do that, let's say that every person can speak openly and there is no, how to say this, no person in charge of what is to be said.
Mm-hmm.
People will get used to the concept of saying, let's say, offensive words. And after they get used to that, they will escalate into more offensive words. And after that, they could go into racism. And then they could go to more. And after that, I guess that we finish the evolving and segregating into groups of people with particular opinions.
Well, but that's where we have to count on and believe in the competition, the market of competition of good ideas. Bad ideas, when given a lot of room to express themselves, die quick deaths as bad ideas. If you look in the United States right now, we do not really have a hate speech problem. Okay, we have some people claiming there's a problem, but everybody kind of knows. Don't use these words. Don't say that. It's not a good thing to say. But the problem comes in when one person or one body gets to make the decision as to what is good speech and what is not. Often good ideas. I'll give you a good example of this. Right now, in the research world, research into different races and their abilities has come under attack. Okay, so research into IQ, research into anything that is based on race has come into attack in the scientific world. The problem with that is when you prevent research on race and you call just that research an expression of hate, you stop people from researching racial traits like athleticism, intelligence, and the research into those things could lead to research into diseases we know affect predominantly or exclusively one race, like sickle cell anemia for sub-Saharan Africans, or a long laundry list of diseases we know predominantly affect Jews, like Tay-Sachs, Canavan, Niemann-Pick, Gaucher disease, and you could go on with those. So when you say this, and you say you can't go into this hate speech, or that the hate speech is a problem and you shouldn't be researching in these areas because it's considered hate, you stop yourself from advancing as a society.
There will always be people that consider that something is wrong, but then I would ask you, Art, what is the model that you would consider ideal? Because my concern is that if we were to give so much freedom to people with, let's say, little to no regulation, things will continue to escalate until we get to maybe a third world war or something that we would like not to happen again. What would be your ideal situation in your opinion?
Well, I don't think you ever get to a world war based on what you refer to as hate speech. I think that's, in effect, a slippery slope fallacy. Do you have evidence that that's the case?
Once again, I am only a 30 years old person, but let me give you one idea of something that I have heard throughout watching TV and Discovery Channel. If I understand this correctly, at some point, Hitler, he decided to make some promotion of inferiority of races.
Mm-hmm.
And because of those promotions, people were misled or thought that they were, let's say, superior than other people. And because of that mentality, they simply started to consider that, yes, we deserve more than others. We deserve to teach others what is right and what is wrong, and that we are superior. In my mind, I believe that that's one of the things that led us to the Second World War.
Okay, well, I'm glad you went there, because when it comes to Hitler and the Nazis, what do you think they did as a government? What do you think they did when somebody presented an opposing position? When somebody tried to speak and say, this stuff is bad?
I guess they would try. I imagine that they tried to silence the person, to reduce the resources that person had.
They arrested and killed them.
Yes, I was going to go to that. Hopefully they wouldn't end up doing that, but sadly they probably ended up silencing people. Yes.
Yes, and so the thing is that really we're looking at. I'm trying to find the exact person who said it. Okay. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis advised in his Whitney versus California opinion, if there be time to expose through discussion the falsehood and fallacies, to avert the evil by the process of education, the remedy to be applied is more speech, not enforced silence. And by that, what he's saying is, in a case like we have with Hitler, where he believes that Jews are evil and we need to kill them, all right, that you need people speaking up to talk about this. That's silencing people, because the Jews the Jews were saying, hey, this is wrong, this is bad, and the Nazis came out and said, no, that's hate speech. You need to shut up.
But in that case, I can see two things that were done wrong. They were silencing people that wanted to express their opinion towards something that was bad. But what I'm also trying to say is that someone was stating information that was going to harm in the near future, in the distant future, one particular race. So if we were not to regulate them, this is going to happen again. So
but what happens when the government is the one doing it?
I consider that the problem we face is that we don't know who is the right group or the right person to decide.
Yes, exactly. We can't say, hey, these are the people with the good ideas, these are the people with the bad ideas. We really don't know who the good people. It's very hard to say. So the thing is, everybody loves human rights. This is a quote from Shami Chakra. I gotta say the name right. Shami Chakrabarty from the Oxford Union. She said, everybody loves human rights, including free speech. They love their own. It's other people's which are a bit more of a problem. And I thought that was brilliant, right? Because in order to protect your right to say something, you have to be willing to give that right to somebody else to say what they want to say.
Okay. Then, at least in this case, I have one question for you, Art.
Mhm.
While I understand that you say that there is no, let's say, what I'm understanding is that there is no right person to decide who gets to say what. But if we acknowledge that, what is the solution? What is the alternative? Do we just allow people to speak freely?
Yes. Yeah.
Up until what
Pretty
point?
much.
What-
Unless it fits one of the conditions that I stated at the outset.
Do you want
Okay.
to repeat those conditions for the newer people here?
Sure, absolutely. Okay. The types of speech that are not protected under the United States Constitution, there's actually four. The fourth, I'm not sure that I actually agree with.
Okay.
so I'm going to use to say the first three. The first three: one, an immediate incitement to violence. You brought up, Paul. You brought up earlier bullying. Bullying is an incitement to violence. It's fighting words. Okay, so that is not protected speech. Two, plagiarism. Plagiarism is the theft of an idea, so it's not protected speech. And the last is slander or libel, which I would argue is also theft because you're stealing a man's good name, even though they've done nothing. So those three types of speech are not protected. And I would agree 100% that those things should not be protected. All other speech, however, we should protect.
But you do realize that when you indicate that these three should not be protected, someone decided that they shouldn't be protected. And that person made the right decision. So even if people were to continue to make mistakes today, tomorrow, and in this year, there is the possibility that at one point in the future, someone makes a good decision and we include an additional category in this.
Okay, Paul. So your contention, or not your contention, but you're saying that maybe this list isn't good enough, that we should be adding more to it as our society changes? Is that...
What I'm trying to say is basically our society is constantly evolving, changing, creating new vocabulary, new words, new things to be annoyed at. So since this was violence, plagiarism, and all the other categories, this was something that was decided at some point in our society by a group of people, maybe for one person. So that gives us the precedent that at least at one point in history, we made the right decision. We don't know what person specifically did that right decision, but we do acknowledge that this decision worked. So if we were to say, like, from now on, we are not supposed to modify this anymore, we could say that we are denying us the opportunity of evolving our language, evolving our society, changing the way in which we speak.
Okay, can I ask you two questions, Paul? And then I have a question for Art, too. Paul, would you like do you believe that it would be best if there was a group of people who thought for you?
No. Because then I would lose my own freedom.
Okay. So do you think there should be a group of people that think for you and then decide how you should express yourself? How you express your thoughts?
If we were to say this individually, yes, because I would like for people to regulate what other people are saying to me. I wouldn't want for people to be openly allowed to
Uh-huh.
offend me, and I would have no way for me to defend myself. In the same way, if someone
Defend against words.
against something that could be it could lead me to feel offended or lead to fighting words and more.
Okay, so but maybe we should take fighting words off the table because you are both against the incitement of violence, which would be the fighting words.
While it's correct, yes, I am against that, but that doesn't mean that the other people that are not involved in this conversation now will agree to that.
Okay, but we're trying to find common ground and discrepancies within you two, I would say. So we're not debating the people in chat, although they have questions and they have opinions. But it might be good to stay within the bounds of what you both agree on. Or am I out of line?
No, I know. I think we both agree that incitement to violence is bad. I would certainly welcome someone to come in and argue that incitement to violence is good. I'd be on Paul's side. That's a bad thing.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
then I would like to ask one question to Art, and you also said that you had one question for Art.
Mhm.
Now, Art, you are stating that it's very difficult to know who's the right person, who's the, let's say, the knowledgeable person to decide what should not be said and what should be said. But at the same time, you mentioned that someone decided that incitement of violence, plagiarism, and more was wrong, and this was not decided at the beginning of free speech. This was
Oh,
decided.
actually, no. Well, it's decided by the courts have decided, and they continue to update that decision. There's actually two fairly important court cases. One was Whitney versus California, 1924. Gertz versus Welch in 1974 is important. And I'm trying to remember the last one. Brandenburg, I think it was 1969, but I might be wrong on that name.
Okay,
So
and would you say that they are doing an acceptable job? They are in the right, on the right way or road?
Sure. But the decisions they're making are saying basically that we should not restrict speech, including hate speech.
They agree that we should restrict plagiarism, right?
Plagiarism, yes, but not hate speech. They disagree with you and say that you cannot. Okay, from Whitney versus California. Fear of serious injury cannot alone justify suppression of free speech and assembly. Men feared witches and burnt women. And that's from the Salem witch trials, 1692, 1693. It is the function of speech to free men from the bondage of irrational fears. To justify suppression of free speech, there must be reasonable ground to fear that serious evil will result if free speech is practiced. There must be reasonable ground to believe that the danger apprehended is imminent. There must be reasonable ground to believe that the evil to be prevented is a serious one. That's Justice Louis Brandeis in the Whitney opinion.
Okay. The way I see that, just to, let's say, try to clarify my opinion even further, they are deciding what is, let's say, the best way for society to prosper. If there was some precedent that something wasn't good, that it didn't lead to the betterments of society, it should be regulated or it should be restricted. In the future, at a point where you and I are not alive, there is the chance that something is going to arise that is going to be harmful or toxic or is going to affect other people. And at that point, more things need to be regulated. Or would you say that that is unlikely to happen, Art?
I would say it's unlikely to happen. I think you have to get down to the idea that what you may consider offensive, other people may not. What society may think is offensive, other people may not consider offensive. India, fairly recently, banned a film called India's Daughter. It was a documentary about a New Delhi gang rape because it, and I quote, offended the honor of India and defamed the country and was considered hate speech by the Indian government. So governments can come out and say, hey, this is hate speech, this is evil, this is offensive, even though it's presenting something that should be out there. We should have access to that knowledge. So I really don't see a government, I don't see the US government anyway, ever coming along and saying, no, we have to stop somebody from presenting these ideas because we think they're bad.
Jennifer, you can proceed with the one question you said you had for me or for Art.
I have another question for you, and then I have a question for Art. It sounds to me, Paul, that you would not want to hang out with racists or rapists or mean, offensive people. Is that true?
Personally, at least in the way I think about myself, I would say that I would accept to be with these people as long as I see that they are not being that they are not creating a negative result on society. Because how can I know if one person is going to be a racist or similar without knowing that person? So
yes. That's kind of my point. There's no way that you can know anyone if you restrict them being able to freely speak about who they are.
Now, you can't drive bad ideas underground because then they fester underground.
I mean, because it sounds like you're not saying that it should be illegal to think racist thoughts, but it should be illegal to say the racist thoughts. But that doesn't clean anything, in my estimation. It doesn't clean society. It doesn't make it safer. It just makes the racists potentially more have to be more crafty and cunning, because they have to be more secretive. That's just something.
But then I face the following problem. Let's say maybe it's only my idea, maybe it's my imagination, but I consider that there is a very high chance that history will repeat itself if we simply allow for people to openly speak what is on their mind. Now, there are some ideas that are beneficial for society. What I would like to consider is that we need to have, let's say, a set rule of ideas that restrict what people should say, because we don't know what could be said in the future that affects us negatively.
Who's us? I mean,
Society?
Okay. So it's a collective glob of humans. It's not a bunch of individuals. It looks like that's how you're viewing it. See, yes. There's a saying. It's the most. Oh God. It's the person that has the least amount of. Shit. The biggest minority is the individual.
So smallest minority. The smallest minority is individual. That's Ayn Rand. Excellent quote.
So Paul, it would be tricky if you and I were in a room together, because someone could call me every name in the book and say that white people are the worst and they're the devil and they're taking down the world. And I would want to hear that so I could understand that maybe this person isn't the person I want to hang out with, or have a conversation and try to convince them. Whereas maybe there'd be someone in the room, you or someone else, that would say, you shouldn't say that, shut up, that's a bad thing to say. And I think maybe what the people that said 111 on their vote about being a free speech absolutist is that thing. It's like you or a government or someone is dictating what could be offensive to 7 billion individuals or 350 million individuals. That's just a thought. Art, you said before that someone got fired for their political views about feminism.
More than one. Many people, yeah.
So as far as my understanding, that free speech is only protected, citizens are only protected from the government for free speech. Do you think that people should have a right to be able to say their political views at work and be able to keep their job?
Oh, this is such a tough one. It's great. This is a great topic, by the way. Awesome topic. But it's a very difficult one. Because as a libertarian, I definitely have the stance that individual companies should have the right to hire who they want to hire, fire who they want to fire. And it's hard to go against that, but I do believe no platforming, that's what you're talking about, is no platforming. And firing people for their political views, I think that is a very poor precedent. And I really do believe it's going to lead to the point where we're going to see everybody silenced. We're going to see even people that are on any side. Nobody's going to be willing to talk about anything for fear of losing their job. And that's a very scary thing. James Damore, I believe that's his name, he was fired from Google simply for distributing a memo which stated that women did not prefer to go into STEM fields. We know that's a fact. That is not debatable. We know women don't choose to go into STEM fields very often. They do, but not at the rate men do. There's a difference in men and women, and it's okay. That's okay to have that difference. But he expressed this in Google and in a memo to everybody in Google in a way of saying, hey, we should try to attract women to Google by going in other than STEM fields. He was fired for that decision, for just putting out that memo. That is clearly wrong. It's clearly wrong. Yet that was considered hate speech by Google, so he was fired.
So your position is, for the best outcome, freedom of speech everywhere. Every company allows.
Yeah, I think so. I think you can't. I think no platforming is a terrible thing. Cancel culture, in effect, right? Or victimhood culture is what I like to call it. I think you even alluded to that before. A culture in which you identify by how much of a victim you are here or there. It's a very bad thing.
Art, when's the last time you were offended?
Well, I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, so as soon as the Bucs lose, I'm offended.
Okay. Maybe we can outlaw that.
Yeah, exactly. My Bucks are bad, so we should make that illegal. Bucks should always be good. And I'm a New York Knicks fan, so it makes it even worse. But legitimately offended.
Yeah.
I would say it's darn near impossible to offend me, and here's why. I think Katie Hopkins said it very, very well in her Oxford Union debate on no platforming, when she said, "I don't give offense when I speak. You choose to take offense. Mm-hmm. What you really need to do is start making better choices. Don't choose to be offended. If you hear an idea that's really bad, you hear something that is offensive, just realize that the guy's an idiot. The guy's a moron, and move on."
Paul, do you remember the last time you were offended?
I would say that it was about 3 years ago with one of my students.
Okay. And the reason I ask is because I wonder, it seems to me, and this is just a guess, but the people that tend to be offended a little bit more easy and often, I think, are the ones that are a little bit more wanting to clench free speech, meaning they want to eradicate it a little bit more freely than someone who's like, you can say whatever to me, I absolutely don't care. I wonder if there's any correlation there. I wonder.
I'm sure there is.
You would think so. I'm not quite positive. So, Paul, I'm just so interested in you. Did you go to university?
Yes.
How many years has it been since you've been out of university?
8 years or more.
Okay, and Art, what about you? Did you go to university?
Yes, I went to many years of university.
Okay, and how many years has it been since you were in university?
2009 I got my PhD in 2009.
Okay, because I wonder if there's a correlation there too. I just feel like people are taught to be offended. And
yes, very much so.
and watchdogs for other people. Because Paul, it sounds like you have a lot of I always get these words mixed up because I don't have these kind of emotions. It's not sympathy, but you want to like really make sure that everyone's protected.
Empathy, would it be?
Yeah, I think so. And I, you know what I've been offended about is people trying to defend me when I don't need it. Because I think it robs people of an opportunity to handle their own shit. And I wonder if people are trying to use the law to make sure that that no one has an opportunity to feel anything bad. And if that's a good thing, because Paul, you're talking a lot about pushing society in a direction of enlightenment, utopia, safety, happiness. No one is subjugated to anyone else. Everyone feels good. Is that a good direction? Well, most people would probably think so, but have you guys heard the saying? What is it? Like, hard times create. You know it. You all know it. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create strong times. Something like this.
Jennifer, we have evidence that a pure utopia is a bad idea. We had a community of white mice. And we gave them food whenever they needed it. We gave them the ultimate in comfort, all the play they could want. If they started to fight, they separated and put them in different areas and made everybody happy. And that society of mice died out, I think it was within 4 generations.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah,
we do not thrive on purely good things.
Mm-hmm.
It is indeed possible that I'm being too optimistic or idealistic, but still I consider that my approach will be a good one or well-intended. But then I still have the same problem or the same question. If we were not to regulate what we can say...
Well, we don't now in the United States. We don't regulate hate speech. So go ahead.
So can... people use any word they feel like to describe another race, and that's fine?
Yeah, well, it depends. By the law, yes, by the law you can use any word you like. You will not be arrested for it by the government.
But then there are racist words that can be considered fighting words.
Correct.
Why? Well, but why? Can you say why? I mean, if someone calls me a cracker, I mean, I could use the N-word, because that would probably be the most classic example.
Right.
But if I say that, does that mean that I hate a certain group of people? Does that mean I want to fight them? Does that mean I want them dead? Or did I just use a word and then that word is transmitted through all of the neuroconnectors of history and experience to come out into the ears of the person hearing it, and then they process it and go, that was fighting words. You don't even say that. You don't even say anything about my mama. That type of a shit. You know, like I'm scripting a video, and I was thinking a lot about how people will defend their childhood and defend their parents no matter what. And you could say something very light about some people's parents, and that would be fighting words. But is it? If enough people are offended by people talking about their parents, will that ever be off the table to not talk about people's parents?
I mean, bringing somebody's lineage into question used to be considered fighting words. Calling someone a bastard when their parents were married, that was considered fighting words in the past. It's no longer considered that.
Is that because it was regulated, or because it was used so much that people are like, fuck it, I'm a bastard? Like,
I think it mattered. I think it used to matter. I don't think it matters anymore. I think divorce rates being so high, we have so many bastards and so many single mothers out there that being a bastard now is kind of almost the rule rather than the exception in certain communities.
Yeah. I wonder if it's like if we outlawed the use of the word bastard, if it would have actually done anything for society, if it would have kept it taboo. So more people would have not.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think a big thing is that almost all the civil rights we have today started off with somebody being offended.
Well, what do you mean?
Okay, yeah. Let's look at gay rights. Right? I think we can all agree gay people should have rights, right? We don't have. Nobody hates anybody for being gay, I hope.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't, but actually,
Okay.
I wouldn't mind if somebody did, because that's how much of I absolutely don't care who hates who.
Well, right. But the thing is that back in the 60s and 70s, being gay was considered offensive. Talking about gay rights was offensive. It was considered hate speech towards straight people, hate speech towards some of the religious people. So the idea of gay rights was considered hate speech. It's not anymore today. We grew because somebody put out an idea that was offensive. And we grew as a society to say, you know what, it doesn't bother me. You know, you're not asking me to sleep with you. As a guy, you know, you're not asking me to suck a dick. I'm sorry if I shouldn't say that, but, you know, you're not asking me to do that. So you do what you want to do. I really don't care. As far as like the evolution of language, back in the 60s and 70s, calling somebody gay was considered a slur. Today, it's the preferred word. In fact, according to the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, the opposite of heterosexual, homosexual, is now considered a hate word. So it's crazy how the language morphs like that. But other areas, black rights, okay? Back in the 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, to talk about blacks having equal rights, that was considered offensive by some people. And we only have civil rights because Martin Luther King came out and said the most amazing words, that man should be judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. Women's rights. At one point, it was considered offensive to talk about women's rights. Yet, women did it, and now women have rights, which they absolutely should have always had. So it all started off with somebody being willing to offend society.
But then, may I ask, someone was willing to offend people, and that's something I do not oppose. That I think that people should have a thicker skin and be able to tolerate being told their own reality. But what happens when someone decides to destroy one person's either their morality or who they are, and they are, let's say, not able to face it properly? While I do not consider that the government should take care of the person because he was maybe not raised properly or he's unable to tolerate being said some things, there has to be a limit, because you cannot simply allow for those of more problematic childhoods be destroyed because someone has a problem, a personal problem, and he decides, I'm gonna take out my problem in this person that did nothing wrong to me.
Well, where does that stop, right? Where does that stop? Who gets to make that decision? Again, no individual has, everybody's going to speak from their perspective, right? And if they think this is hateful, or they think that's bad, or they think that disturbs them, that's all subjective. That leads to something like, you know, me saying, like I said, like I joked about earlier before, but the Buccaneers have had some really offensive play. Does that mean sports should be illegal? You know,
And let me say that I was to propose this system. We were to do some type of digital voting process where people get to decide what can be offensive and what is not offensive, and based it on that, we create a new ruling. Would you say that that is more acceptable than any other idea before?
who gets to decide? I'm not sure I quite followed.
Let's say that we were to make every person in one country vote for what they consider offensive and not offensive.
Okay.
After
So that's the society at large argument. Okay, and that brings up the tyranny of the majority. Some examples of where that's actually a really bad idea. In the 14th century, society at large said that peasants shouldn't be able to read the Bible. Suggesting they should be permitted to do so got one shouted down with the masses after going, and they went after your employment if you suggested that peasants be able to read the Bible. So that's society at large making that decision. Society at large, atheism. Today, actually, I think is something we could even look at. In 1911, Mary Shelley, the lady who wrote Frankenstein, She was banned from Oxford for writing a pamphlet called The Necessity of Atheism. Historical accounts from Oxford at the time refer to Shelley's pamphlet causing maximum offense and being a work of hate, because that's what society at large said. So society at large makes very bad decisions.
But we do know that at some points we make the right decision.
Well, right, because we allow people to speak up and say offensive things.
Because we also allow people to try to monitor and restrict what people can say. Because if we restrict plagiarism, that is something positive that happened because
it's theft. Because we're stopping theft. We stop plagiarism because it's theft.
May I interject? Paul, you asked before about maybe if a country could vote for if something is offensive or not. Could you... when I think of the beauty of free speech, I think of basically what you're saying, a vote, from a country reduced down to a friend group. So now you have the sky is the limit. You can hate white people, you can hate black people, you can hate gay people, you can hate rich people, you can hate poor people. And you find a group that votes basically on if that's acceptable within that group. I think there's so much more beauty in being able to move around within a society and hear different stupid ideas and different good ideas rather than a blanket of 350 million, like, you can't say that word. You can't say that word. We would like to, but you can't say that word here. You know what I mean? I think that's so much more delicious and nutritious for a soul and the individuals within a society. Do you understand that idea, maybe? What do you think about that idea?
basically what I can say is that I understand the following. It's very likely that Art has a good idea. His idea works entirely well. In the same way, I suppose that my idea works. We have different opinions. So what I consider, even before we started, what I have been considering is that I will not be able to change the opinion of Art. He has plenty of knowledge, way more knowledge than I do. But what I'm trying to aim at is the people that are listening to me to see if they can maybe change their perspective or think that I'm wrong or think that I'm right. So I wasn't able to answer your question, but I wanted to express that. If you could please, can you repeat your question, Jennifer?
Oh, sure. The question was, can you see a possible benefit to, instead of a huge population of a country voting on what is offensive and what is not, to rivet that down into the small cultures that we all have an opportunity to potentially be a part of, such as family, different work spaces, friend groups, social groups. And the culture, the unique cultures of all those groups basically votes. I mean, it's not like they're like, raise your hand if this word is offensive or not. But you understand the friend group. You understand. I mean, we all have friends that I know I can't say some shit to some of my friends because they're so sensitive. And then there's others who I can say anything and we can laugh about anything. And it's really fun. But I understand that every unique salad dressing personality, I always think that you can't put ranch and like there's different seasoning packets that work really well together. So could you think that maybe there would be a benefit to overarching freedom of speech and small groups that exist right now where you can vote on what is offensive and what's not? That was long-winded per usual, but does it make sense?
I can say that I understood portions of that question, but I'm sorry, I wasn't able to fully understand the complete question. Could you please simplify it?
Would you rather have 350 million of the population of the United States decide if a word is offensive or not, or would you rather have the 350 million people say, I don't give a fuck, you go out into the world and find your friend groups and you decide in those private groups if you accept that or not?
Well, to some extent, that already happened, because if someone was to use a word that you do not appreciate, you could decide not to associate with that person. I mean, we have the freedom to associate with whomever we want.
Agreed.
So that is already in play. I mean, I am not trying to suggest that one single action, one single law, one single restriction is going to help society. What I'm trying to say is that by allowing a group of people, I cannot state properly what group could do that, but by allowing a group of people to restrict what could be said, similar to racist or hate speech, by allowing that to be restricted, not to mention that we already have something called stigma, or at least taboo, which are words that we do not use, or at least people prefer not to use. If we, by having that, we can allow society to progress little by little. Maybe today something is taboo, but in the future is going to automatic. Well, I guess I'm basically defending by saying that I'm agreeing with a portion of what Ari is saying to allow people to develop on their own with not so much restriction.
Yeah, we have the right to choose our friends and come and go as we please, right? You don't like what your friends are saying or the words they're using, choose different friends.
Mm-hmm. Freedom.
Yeah, how about that?
I really like it. So Paul, you were saying before that you came into this, and honestly, thank you both for coming here, because this takes balls. I've invited so many people that I've gotten into confrontations with online to come on my channel to talk to me, and everyone just doesn't do it. So you two, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. And the people that are listening, maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, but we have to agree that coming here takes courage.
I appreciate the opportunity.
No, it's really fun. But Paul, you said that you wanted possibly the opportunity to sharpen people's opinions, either against you or for you. Has anyone been swayed here? Would you viewers put a 1 if you have been swayed, and 2 if you are just as staunch in your position as when you arrived? 1, you changed your position. No, 1, you changed your position. 2, you didn't. And then, does anyone have any questions of Paul or Art? Does anyone have any questions? I don't know if there's a lag or if there's just no questions. I don't see any 1s or 2s. 2. All right, so 2. Lots of 2s. 2. But that's okay, because we have the freedom to use words to try to sway people. I love that.
Was two your position was
not changed.
Not changed, okay.
Not changed. Everyone,
Max, be
nice.
Usually people will not change their opinion.
Oh, don't be negative like that, because, you know, I've said on this channel before, I have a friend who is super articulate and presents really great information, and he always gets upset when he walks away from a conversation. He's like, I didn't change that person's mind at all. People don't change immediately. That's why that's why laws aren't good. Like, stop saying that word, or that's bad. It is an organic growth.
I am not exactly trying to say that I'm negative, because you could say that it's hard for me to change my opinion to your opinion, or on the other way, it is hard for Art to change his opinion. Basically, if a person dedicates years of his life believing that, let's say, blue is blue, the moment another person says, no, you're wrong, that's not blue, you're not going to believe him because of the years that you have invested in that.
I think you'd find that I'm a good bit more open-minded than that. If you present evidence, strong evidence, I will change my opinion. And I've done it throughout my life.
Well, there is a thing there that you have years of experience seeing that, so you should already have way more examples than I could generate in one day.
Of changing opinions. And the thing is, I agree with something Jennifer said earlier, that opinions don't change overnight. What we're going to do is we're trying to plant a seed. When you have a discussion like this, you try to plant a seed. If somebody feels some cognitive dissonance, are you familiar with that term, Paul?
Where they believe that something is correct and it is actually not?
Where they hold 2 points of view at once. One of them is conscious, one of them is unconscious. So they hold both of these ideas, and it feels really uncomfortable. So you have a conversation like this so that you can invoke some cognitive dissonance, so that somebody can start to feel like, I still hold that, and to say beyond my opposition, I still hold that hate speech is bad. We shouldn't allow it, but somehow I'm not quite sure that that's right. And then they think about it, and over time, their mind is changed. That is why you have a discussion like this.
In that case, Art, I would like to ask you one question because maybe I haven't seen this enough. But if you're saying that hate speech is so readily available for people to use, why is it that people despise so much the word nigger and similar? I mean, in general, people don't want to listen to that word.
Because there's a long history of discrimination against Black people. And that word was used as a derogatory term for them for so long.
Yes, I understand. I completely understand that point of view. I know the origins. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
But my question
No, that's fine.
If it is not illegal, would you say that simply because it's taboo, people are not using it?
Well, here's the thing is you don't want to be a hypocrite, right? So Black people use it all the time. All the time. You don't believe me? Go listen to a rap song.
Yes.
Well,
but
and I would
more
say,
in general.
I would say, Paul, the beauty of the freedom of speech is that by the people that are uncomfortable saying it, or they don't want to say it, or they think it's disrespectful, they're going, because of that freedom of speech and not using that word, they're going to unite with other like-minded people. There's also a lot of people out there that use that word, and Black people that accept that word from white people, and white people that accept that word from white people, that find each other because of it. And we can think whatever we want about those unique groups. We can think they're prudes or racists, but it's every individual's right to be able to say the words, to hear, and then find people to connect with or be repelled from. That's why I think it's great if people use that word if they want to, because then it shows me who I don't want to hang out with.
Yeah, there you go. Right, exactly. Exactly. Let me know that you're a rampant racist who says horrible things, and that way I know, and I can just avoid you.
That's one reason why I hate feminism. It tells men to shut up on every front, be respectful, be this, be this, be this, be this. So then when there is someone who is legitimately a fart, they are just no, I have to act like this, and then women can't sense if they want to be with them or not because everyone is.
And modern day feminism makes women out to be victims. You're all victims because you're not strong enough to do things on your own. I think that's insulting.
I'm not strong enough to do a lot of things on my own, and I'm not insulted.
Well, no. But you're strong enough mentally. We're not saying. We're saying, well, you can't handle it. You can't handle it on your own. You're just too mentally weak. That's insulting to women. Don't say they're stronger than men in some mental aspects. So why are we insulting women by telling them what they can't do?
But let's get back to the N word with Paul. Yeah. What did you think about my response about the freedom to use that word to associate or disassociate with individuals?
That is entirely right. People have the right to associate with whomever they prefer. The situation that I still wonder, because I don't have as much information as I would want to, but I still wonder if it is legal for people to use it. What is stopping us from using it at every moment that we have the chance to?
It's stopping you. It's stopping me. It's stopping unique individuals.
No, I have a good answer for that, actually. Okay? Knowing that you have the right to say something is not the same as a duty to say it. Knowing you have the right to offend doesn't mean you have a duty to offend. I may have the rights. I may have the right to offend, but I don't choose to if I can avoid it.
Even so, I have seen, I believe, I recall this situation of PewDiePie, where he used the word nigger, and he was judged for it. Now, I don't know if he said it directed to a person that had that color of skin, or if it was just to release frustration, but he was judged very harshly because of that. So
So what?
we are not simply, well, some people or
But he-
internet is
But he
not a
wasn't
total.
arrested. But he wasn't arrested by the government.
Should he have been?
No.
No, Paul.
No.
Well, what if there was a vote? I mean, would you say that that's a moral thing that PewDiePie would be arrested because he said that word and there was a vote on it?
No, I'm not trying to say that he should have been arrested. He was
No,
heavily
but
judged because of...
what if there was a vote? What if there's 100 people in the country and 51 voted that people should be arrested that say the N-word? Would you think that is a morally good societal decision? Personally, Paul.
I would imagine that if that was to happen and the government was not to do it, people would riot due to their frustration of that, and the government in the long run would be forced to change the law. So if that was to happen, I suppose that yes, people will be jailed for using that word.
Did you answer? So would you say that that's a morally good thing to lock people up for saying words if the majority finds it offensive?
No, not at all, but I'm only one individual.
And a very important one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is that it?
Let me. Can I close with a statement?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course.
Okay. Perhaps one of the greatest legal minds of the 20th century, Oliver Wendell Holmes, said, "To curtail free expression strikes twice at intellectual freedom. For whomever deprives another of the right to state unpopular views necessarily also deprives others of the right to listen to those views. And I don't want anyone telling me what I can or cannot hear." I'll close with that.
Amen. I like that. Paul, would you like to close with anything?
No, not really. I from the very beginning, I would like to at least clarify, English is not my first language.
You were wonderful.
Thank you. I was hoping just to get myself into a situation where I don't normally get myself into, to prove that I can maybe hold myself against people that have more years than I do speaking English. And I guess I was able to hold myself even though I was the opposing party.
You did just fine, Paul.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I like I said, I think it takes a lot of courage. So I appreciate both of you for coming, and I appreciate everyone for tuning in today. I think I'm going to end the stream.
Thank you for having us. Just say that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks for being subscribers and hanging out, and thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to this nice conversation with these two fine gentlemen. Okay? Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
All right, everyone. I'm still here.
I am too, obviously.
Oh, okay.
Well, I knew you were closing it, so close the stream and we'll go from there.
All right. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. And you know what? I do this a lot. That's not what I want. If anyone has any questions, they can. Oh, and that's my PayPal too. That's not a hint. It is a hint. But if you have any personal questions or ever want to email me, I'm here for you, subscribers. Okay, everyone, be well. I'll see you next week. New video on Tuesday.